Hi folks, it's Sonia with 2x2 Lagotto and Kennels. Talking to you today from my vehicle on the road. Well, I'm not driving at the moment. I'm just sitting here parked. My daughter has her equestrian lesson today, so I'm going to YouTube it from the parking lot of the barn where she takes lessons. And I probably look like I've been crying, because I have, but we're just going to keep it real and push through with some YouTube information that I think y'all need. Sad day on the farm. Loss, death, part of farming makes it no less sad though. So enough of that. Let's talk about some reproductive health with your Lagotto. Spaying, neutering, boy dog, girl dog. What are the benefits of each? How do I know which one I should pick? When should I spay and neuter? Is my boy dog going to lift his leg in the house? We'll answer all those questions. The first thing is about spaying and neutering. So we'll talk about that. In my puppy packets, I have lots of information about that, but I'll just go over some of it here. So, are there negative effects to spaying and neutering? I used to think not. I used to kind of think, oh, as soon as your pet reaches 20 pounds, let's spay and neuter. And then I began to kind of see some not so beneficial things happening. Not necessarily to me, but to people around me and their breeding programs. And so I kind of paused, regrouped, did some research, and this is what I have come up with. So the average veterinarian, no disrespect, has always been taught that you should spay and neuter early. That's actually not the veterinarian who came up with that philosophy. Came out of the colleges who have been influenced by the Humane Society. And I have no good feelings about the Humane Society because I think well, it doesn't matter what I think at this moment on this video. That's for another day. But so let's talk about the benefits to spaying and neutering. So the average vet thinks that's what they should do, but there's research that is contradicting now that philosophy of spaying and neutering early. So your vet may say to you, well, there'll be less mammary gland tumors. You lower the risk of pyometria. Pyometria is a condition where an infection can form inside the uterus due to repeated hormone overstimulation. If you spay and neuter early, you won't have to go through an estrus or a heat cycle. There is bleeding during the heat cycle. It's not excessive. There's little doggy panty guards for that. You may have less wandering, but I think the wandering actually has more to do with a lack of offense and the breed of dog you get and your training than it has to do with their reproductive status. And people talk about humping, for lack of a better word. People call it humping. It's actually mounting. It's actually a dominance thing and not necessarily a reproductive or gender-related thing. Neutered dogs can mount other dogs. Spayed dogs will mount other dogs. It has to do with establishing a hierarchy, especially if you have a pack, especially if you're at a dog park or whatever. It's a dominance issue. They're establishing their dominance. Will spaying and neutering resolve that? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Aggression, there could be, less aggression in dogs, especially males. But I think that's breed dependent also. I think that has some to do with socialization also. Um, they say that there's a lower risk of testicular cancer in males that have been neutered, and I've seen research that shows both. Um, where I see it come into play is if you have testicles that have not descended, which is called cryptorchism, and you can have a bilateral or a unilateral, meaning one testicle or both testicles. And so if they retain their testicles, they will need to have that surgically corrected, because that, that's not where the testicles belong, up in the inguinal canal. They don't belong there, so you run the risk of testicular cancer, prostate disorders. We don't neuter our humans and think that that's going to take care of prostate disorders. So I think that kind of shoots that logic out. So the scientific evidence that we have, pet overpopulation, neuter your pet so there's no overpopulation. Well, to be quite honest, I think that's them calling us dummies. And I'm not a dummy. My clients aren't dummies. We're not going to let our dogs knock up the neighbor's dog. I don't have a single client that is that irresponsible, or they're not getting a puppy from me. So I think that's a fallacy. Over in Europe, they don't have pet overpopulation problems, and they only spay and neuter over in Europe out of medical necessity. Not every companion animal is spayed and neutered. So, cross that off the list as being a reason to spay and neuter. And if your vet says, well, we don't want to overpopulate, what am I going to overpopulate with my companion Lagotto? I don't understand. We distort bone structure certainly by spaying and neutering early. The ligaments, the bones, the relationship between all of those is definitely affected when we spay and neuter. All the studies show that this phenomena is extensive in dogs. The abnormalities that result because they do not have these necessary hormones, which are removed from the body because they've spayed and neutered. So they've removed those glands that produce those hormones that are necessary for bones, bone structure, ligament formation, and maturity. And, I'm a proponent of spaying and neutering later. I'm not saying not at all. I'm saying later. Is it beneficial to maybe not ever neuter and spay? Yes, but I'm going to leave that decision up to my clients, and I just want them to be educated. So this is my part in educating people. Early spaying and neutering has a negative impact on bone and joint health. There's orthopedic disorders, there's subsequent arthritis, there's osteosarcoma, which is a bone cancer, hip dysplasia. These things can certainly develop with this early spaying and neutering. You also run into hypothyroidism. I can't even tell you the gobs and gobs and gobs of numbers of dogs that are on hypothyroid medication. And I promise you it can be linked back to, their hormones were disrupted when they were spayed and neutered too early. There's an increased risk for obesity when we spay and neuter too early. There's an increase in cruciate ligament tears when we spay and neuter too early. Urinary tract problems, urinary incontinence, urinary tract infections. Those are all things that can result from spaying and neutering too early, especially in female dogs. When we're taking out those parts, that messes with all that ligature in their pelvic wall, and guess what? Later on in life, they can develop those things. I mentioned hypothyroidism. Another hormone imbalance that goes along with early spay and neuter is diabetes. So those are some things to consider. Do veterinarians disagree on this? You better believe it. There's considerable disagreement. The advocates for early spay and neuter really only have one argument that they thought they could stand on, and that was the pet overpopulation. I'm not overpopulating with my dogs. In fact, my breeding program is built on a very selective, rolling 10-year plan of who's going to get bred to whom, when, and I don't breed the litter until I have properly vetted, thoroughly checked out families, companion homeowners. I'm not bringing a litter into the world without those people. I depend very heavily on my family companion owners, and we check each other out and make sure that we're a good fit, and then I do my due diligence while they're doing their due diligence to make sure that I am the breeder for them and that they're the owner for me. Then I bring the puppies into the world. In my 30 years of doing this, I have literally never had anybody call me and say, Fifi got out and got bred by my next door neighbor's Chihuahua. I've never had it happen. My pet owners are responsible. They're diligent. They're intelligent, and so to have this blanket statement to spay and neuter early so that we don't cause pet overpopulation is ludicrous. And I don't have an opinion about that, if you can't tell. Anyway, so we tell people that spaying and neutering is a personal decision. We want you to make this decision. Our contract says 9 to 18 months. I give wiggle room on the back end of that, meaning if you want to keep your dog intact longer, I'm happy to do that. I'm not going to okay it earlier, except in rare veterinary second opinion situations. And the research I'm showing shows that dogs live an average of 30% longer. So that's 3 to 4 years longer if they're not spayed and neutered. I'm all about that. And these are peer-reviewed statistics, double-blind studies. So these are not just something somebody feels, something somebody came up with on their own. These are documented research, and so I appreciate that. So what else do we want to talk about? Which to choose? Do you want a male or a female? And I get this a lot because this question a lot. People, they want a puppy. Which is a male or a female? Well, females, they will have a heat cycle by the time you spay them if you get a puppy from me, because we want to wait until they're 9 to 18 months. So you will have that to deal with, but it'll only be once, twice tops. I've never had anybody complain that it was horrible to deal with. Everybody has dealt with it in stride. Their doggy becoming a woman. There's products on the market. You can put a little doggy diaper on them and it's fine. Lagotto bitches, females, tend to be clean, so they're cleaning themselves. They're taking care of it. They can be a little clingy during that time. They could be a little grumpy during that time. But they're overall, I don't really see a whole lot of differences between male and female due to gender. I see differences in the individual, but those are things that we address with our temperament testing. And a minor thing, I maybe noticed that boys might be a little bit easier to crate train and housebreak. I don't know why. Maybe that's my bias because I like boy dogs. I don't know. So I think you have to look at your lifestyle, and if you're going to spay and neuter, I think you don't need to necessarily have a preference. I'm okay if you have a preference. I just want you to have that preference having come into that with a sound knowledge base, and make an educated decision. So if you've just always had female dogs and that's what you want, that's fine. What I don't want you to have is to decide, oh, I don't want a boy dog because he's going to lift his leg in the house. That is actually a learned characteristic. It's not so much a gender trait. I tell people all the time, I had a bitch that I imported from Romania, and she, I'm not kidding, lifted her leg to go to the bathroom. So boy dogs can do it, girl dogs can do it, and it's learned. I have boy dogs that have never seen another boy dog do it, and they don't do it. I have one boy dog who lifts his leg outside. He's not doing it in my house. He doesn't do it. He doesn't have a reason to do it in the house. I think that is a fallacy, misinformation, if you will. A lot of the little breeds do it, and the reason the little breeds do it is because they're not well trained. People carry them around. It's just easier, and people don't know better. They're carrying them around. If they do something wrong, they just pick the dog up and instead of training it not to do what it was just picked up for. So little dogs can be beasts because they're not adequately trained. They are carried around, and carrying a dog around creates an immediate mindset in the dog that owner is his. It's a possession issue. So the dog then possesses you. You're doing his bidding. You're carrying him around. So that's why you see, dogs get kind of nasty when somebody's holding it and somebody else reaches to pet it. So those are just interesting things to note. But I have had a couple of people over the years who did trust me on this, and they got a boy dog because it was the right temperament match for their family. And rest assured, they are firm believers now in, the dog doesn't raise its leg. So raising its leg can be territorial, and you especially see that, like I said, with the small dogs, because there's a lack of training, there's a lack of pack leadership in the home. They feel the need to mark their territory. This is mine. You're sitting on it, but it's mine. I'm going to pee on it. And just behavioral issues. But I don't have dogs marking in my house. I'm not putting up with it. That's my house, and I love my dogs. But we are not going to pee in the house. That's one of the reasons why I chose the Lagotto. I had considered several other small breeds when we were considering adding a breed to our family. When my son became so active with showing, we needed something that was smaller than the Australian Shepherd, something that wasn't eating his breakfast, lunch, and dinner, proverbially speaking. So the other breeds that I considered I'd go and visit a particular breeder, and some of these people were friends of mine. I'd go visit their dogs just to kind of spend some time around the breed, and they had wee pads in places, and they had the edges of their couch taped off with wee pads, and they had belly bands on the boys, and diapers on the girls. I'm just not doing that. And it was several breeds. It wasn't just, one breed. But they were all relatively small, under 20 pounds. So when we were choosing the Lagotto, I wanted trainability. And again, none of our boy dogs, with the exception of one that we imported, lift their legs. And like I said, he doesn't even do it in the house. That's just how he pees. So when you're considering boy dog versus girl dog, again, I'm okay with personal preference. I'm okay with making educated decisions. And I'm okay with people, it's just a preference. I'm fine with that. So that's kind of my topics and conclusions about boy dogs lifting their legs and the differences between boys and girls. But I think at the end of the day, if you're going to be spaying and neutering, you're leveling the playing field. So what gender the dog is kind of doesn't matter. How they use the bathroom kind of doesn't matter. You want the best natured, the best temperamented puppy for your family. So I think that has to be your focus. Again, I'm okay with preferences. I just want people to make educated decisions about that. So, I think that's all for this segment. I'd love to answer any more questions you may have. You can leave those in the comments below. You can like our Facebook page, which is 2x2 Lagotto on Facebook. You can like this video. You can share this video, and you can subscribe to our page. You can call me with questions, 770-608-1119. We love to talk about Lagotto. All right, folks, have a great day wherever you're at. Bye.